Oh, that can't be good.
I should switch spots.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Okay, we can start it now that we're halfway over.
Well, in closing,
Now you got to
uh,
Nice to meet you, Christine.
The cutest little boy, back to file.
Honoring the little boy.
It's from his father's side.
I can give you a whole bunch more on there.
Oh boy.
Not eight, my own freshman.
So we're all set? Ready to go? Okay. I'm Al Freeman, Director of Schools for the Missouri District. Thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. One of the things that the district does, I think this is probably my 10, 11, 12 presentation on board development, education, effective school boards this year. It's one of the things that we offer and that we hope to do with all schools on an annual basis, hopefully. So it's talked a little bit before. It's not necessarily a one and done and you're good for 25 years kind of thing, but instead really something that is ongoing and should be on your agenda hopefully every year. Just doing an onboarding, education, and what it means to be an effective school board. So with that, Pastor King kind of pointed out before, we do have it recorded in case you want to go back to it or use it for some other purpose or to re-educate, however the case may be. Feel free to do so. I'll email you the link or two in that, and then you can have that. I will also email you the PowerPoint, so don't feel like you got to capture everything right now. You'll get that. If you want to take notes as you go along, feel free to do so. But again, you'll have this to go from as well. With the presentation, it is meant to be ask questions. If something hits you, let me know. If you disagree with something, let me know that too. We'll talk about it. We'll work through it. This is, again, how to be an effective board. So it's really best practices. This is tried and true. Lutheran schools, not just the Missouri district, but throughout the United States and internationally. We have several schools that are international schools. So again, this is something that we do. With that, why don't we go ahead and open in prayer? I think you got to leave early, right? So you want to open it and I'll close it? They'll pull me in from the bullpen at the end?
That's right.
All right.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Dear Heavenly Father, gracious are you in all that you do. You have blessed this congregation with those who sit around this meeting. We pray that you would bless us, O Lord, with understanding and wisdom, that as we can more effectively work together in the good of the early childhood learning center for the benefit of the staff, board, director, families, students, and all involved, the teachers. Bless us, O Lord, in this time that we may enjoy and that we may come to knowledge and understanding. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Governing body, kind of going off the top there. So this is what you are as a board, is the governing body overseeing the early childhood. Different places have different boards. Sometimes you have a early childhood center and a K-8 board. You have a school board, and then you may have an advisory board strictly for early childhood. Often the case. Here it's you, and then you report to, I would imagine, church council. Is that board of directors? Yeah, and then you go on. So governing bodies may look different. They may have different reports and everything else, but there's similarities. Tried and true practices. best practices that we go on. So what is the governing body? It's the guide. You know, you are guiding what's happening. You are steering, pointing direction. We'll see here, we'll talk about strategic planning. You are strategic planners. You are steering direction for the future. You also hear me talk about later on, you're not so much in the present, you're in the future. So your effective boards are really 75% in the future, looking ahead, looking at the path down the road, not in today's world. Today's world belongs to the director or the principal or whatever title. You've provided that direction. Now it's their operation, and they're doing that. And it's communication back and forth. But that is an effective board. Guiding, steering, directing, supervising. And sometimes you'll see this out there. You'll see this in material. There's a couple of different board manuals. Pastor Thiem told me that you were working through one before. It's just a Lutheran Governing Board document that was just redone and put out in 2017. Great document. There's also one out there for early childhood. Early childhood puts a phrase in there called supervises. What does it mean as a board to supervise? I just think this is a tough one. I could be wrong. Set of eyes?
You make certain it's done hopefully right.
What's that?
Hopefully it's done right. You're making certain it's done right.
Making certain it's done right, then what's done right?
The day-to-day operations in the future of the board.
Okay.
Or the school.
Okay.
How is the supervising means to guide, steer, and direct?
Okay. Which is really it. And the supervising, day-to-day, not so much, because what you're doing, again, you're in the future. So you're not involved in the day-to-day. You're not making the sausage day in, day out. That's not what's happening. You are guiding, steering, directing. The supervising sometimes gets that misnomer, and it makes boards think, okay, we got to be in day-to-day operation because we're the supervisor, which is not the case. And I like the way you put it. Supervising meaning guiding, steering, directing, big picture. Policy is the big picture. That's what boards do. Boards look at policy. Boards do not look at procedures and day-to-day operations other than providing policy for those. That's what you do. And that's the guiding, that's the steering. And then the day-to-day is done by your principal, your early childhood director, whatever title you want to give it. That's who does it. And then that person directs the staff and the teacher, the other employees. So you see that top layer, and then you go down and you go day to day, and then you get the people really in the trenches doing the operation. So that's how it happens. So what does it mean? Well, that's kind of what it means right there. The day-to-day stuff is done by the director. And now they're reporting back. They're telling you how it's going. They might be telling you, look, procedures, it's tough because what I have to work with in terms of policy, my procedures to accomplish these things and get them done, it's hard to figure those out. So can we look at policy? I need you to develop a different policy, or this came up. Can we have a policy for this item, whatever it may be, because we don't have one right now and it came up. That's the communication back and forth. And it's also making sure you are informed, because you have to be informed so that you can guide for the future. What does enrollment look like? What does finance look like? What's happening with the staff? What's going on there? Those are all the things that are coming back to you. But it's all done there, and then that communication goes here. You set policy, it goes here, and then you take it back there. So that's kind of how the network goes. Supervising the overall policy, you are communicating the policy. So those are done through employee handbooks. They're done through other items. They're given to Annette, and then Annette passes those on to the employees, to the people who are in the classrooms, the cooks, everyone else. The aides, always a lot of aides in early childhood. So you're setting policy, that's the procedure there. And that's carrying out. You are definitely keeping the early childhood program in front of the congregation. You are that conduit between congregation and early childhood. You do that in a few different ways. One of those ways is you make sure that the net has a chance to talk to the congregation, be before the congregation, to do different things to create the connection between early childhood center and congregation, so that they understand it's a ministry, that it is part of what you do, it is part of who you are, and it's important and why it's important. So you have to make that connection. All of you are cheerleaders for the early childhood center. You are cheering before the congregation, you're cheering with the parents, you're cheering with the kids, you're cheering all over the place. That's what you do. So you're making sure that people know, and you're making sure that people hear about it, you're making sure that you are cheering it on. There's things that are going on that maybe aren't all that great. That's why you have board meetings. That's where you take care of that. Outside of that board meeting, everything's great. You know, you're cheering it on. You're making sure the good things are happening and that people are hearing about the good things. How do you make connections between early childhood center and congregation? How's it done?
This is one of those interaction ones.
That's where we're supposed
Inviting parents.
Sure, I mean, you
I
can
mean,
invite.
not just parents, but congregational members to.
Sure. Absolutely, you can do that. Certainly do that. You want to make sure the congregation knows about the early childhood center, because it's important, right? And because they're ultimately it's their center, right? This is a big thing. You're bringing people in who are members of the church and not members of the church, and people that know Christ and people that don't know Christ. Some of them that will say that they will so they can go to the early childhood center, but they don't. But you're immersing them in it. So you want to make sure that people understand just how amazing that is. Last time I looked, we were called to go and make disciples. You don't have to go very far. You get to go right down the hallway, right in the parking lot. You're doing it every day.
You know, that new sign out there, I don't know if you saw it or not. That says, Marcus, you know, if you have somebody walking by, riding a bike or driving by, that gets to the heart of a lot of people, especially young people, kids. That's what's.
People love kids. Now, that's why we say a lot of times about websites. It's always fun when you do a presentation, you talk about schools and you pull up different websites and you get to see their buildings and you get to see, you know, new steeples, you get to see new classrooms. Nobody cares. Why would I send my child there? I'm really concerned about the building? Absolutely not. What I'm concerned about are the kids in that building, which is why on websites, school websites better have kids, not show off buildings. Because it's kids that make it happen. And that's what you're there for. Which is great for Lutheran schools. You know, everybody always says, how do you do it? Because we don't have a lot, right? Lutheran schools never have that much. We have more than we ever need. God provides always, all the time he provides. We always have more than we need. Because if you look and see what happens in our classrooms, we may not have a 2018 laptop opened up that's all souped up and everything else. We don't need it. Because what we do is incredible. Because what we do is we provide message of the gospel, always. We tell it, we share it, we draw it in our actions, in our deeds, in our behaviors, in our discipline, everything. It's throughout. One of my favorite lines ever, one of my colleagues used to tell me, the greatest thing about Lutheran schools is when you walk in, the walls should ooze with the gospel message. It's true. They should. You have a lot of people that come to Lutheran schools that will say, because they're not from a Lutheran background, there's something different about this place. I don't know what it is, but there's something different. Yes, there is. and you'll find out what that is, because that's something different. It's called the gospel message. We're sharing Jesus Christ and his love every day. And what a great message to bring back to the congregation. Oh, what a great way. Have them draw little pictures, write little notes, put it out on the pews. People come in, they'll be grumpy because something's in my seat. Then they'll pick it up and they'll see a little note card there, little picture drawn by some 3 or 4 year old or something else, and then all of a sudden watch the grumbles go away. Every now and then I have good ideas. I'll give you 15 more, but it'll cost you. So. Yes, yeah, you can do that too. No, share videos, do a little clip of it, do it before church, do it after church. Let them see, let them know. This is what you're doing here. How awesome is that? How awesome is it to see a little kid running around singing about Jesus? If that doesn't get you nothing, well, I love early childhood centers. And the fact that, the little kids always scare me. I was a high school teacher, so. But then I get over it, you get down on your knees and they'll wipe your nose and sneeze on you. But then with glowing faces, they'll tell you the gospel message like nobody else, because they have no barriers whatsoever. We learn those far later. They'll go out in Walmart or wherever else, and next thing you know, they'll be singing Jesus loves me, this I know. Wow, how cool is that? So let people know. That's what a board needs to do.
Our office is right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we just put that all day.
Yeah,
And that-
that is cool. Yeah, and those are the things that members of the congregation miss. What they know is early childhood is happening. Well, I don't know. Okay, no, that's good. Yeah, early childhood outreach. Numbers, finance. Well, you can't put a number on that. So you got to let them know it and experience it. Bless you.
Thank you. There may be more coming.
That's fine. I always tease at my presentation too, so we're in good shape. Board member skills. Another thing about boards is I always say it matters for skill set, because you want a diverse board. You don't want groupthink. You don't want everybody with the same background. You want people with skills, differences, with ideas. It needs to be a safe place. One of the lines from somebody I know that goes around as training for strategic planning. Speak for self. Don't speak for anyone else, because other people have different ideas, may chime in or chime out. Doesn't matter. But feel free to share. You have to innovate. You have to grow. Board meetings are a place to challenge and to come up with ideas. That's called strategic planning, which is the job of a board. Where do we want to go? Who do we want to be? How do we want to get there? 1, 3, 5 years. What should this look like? Project out. That's where you're spending your time and your energy, which is why you need diverse talent. It's great to have educators. It's great to have parents. It's great to have a financial person. What's even better is if you have a financial person that understands ministry, and that's hard to find because a lot of times they understand finance, and it can come into conflict. Well, but we can't purchase this because we don't have the money, but we need to paint pumpkins for Halloween. And we need to teach them. You need to tear the guts out, put a face on, and show them how pulling out the guts is just how sin is pulled out of us. The light's dropped in and it shines through, because the light of Jesus Christ shines within us. And we got to let it glow. Allow others to see it. Finance person might say, no, don't have the money. Finance person who understands ministry will say, we'll figure out a way. And, obviously I'm using a very elementary type of example, but still with other things too. You got to figure that out. But there has to be a balance, because no margin, no mission. In other words, if you're not financially solvent, you can't continue on. So you have to watch the bottom line too. You can't just go crazy, but you have to find that balance. Great financial person helps you find that balance. Leadership skills. Understanding leadership. And a lot of understanding leadership is growing other leaders. And it's also understanding where the different planes fly. A board flying at 40,000 feet because you're out of the weeds. You're big picture, you're long term. You're up there in a long range plane. You're down a little bit lower. You're flying about 15,000 feet, or maybe even a little lower. Sometimes you're a crop duster. You're getting in there, right? And then you have those planes that are on the ground doing the work. You have to understand what level you are. And if you start to miss that level, as a board, if you start to get involved in areas that are day-to-day operations and are procedural items, all of a sudden you are not a well-functioning ministry. That's when things start to fall apart, because people do not understand then, who do I listen to? Who's directing me? What are the policies? Because I'm being told this over here, now I'm being told this over there. You can't work that way. It's not able to function that way. That's how schools break down. And I don't care if it's a Lutheran school, a Catholic school, a public school, they break down that way. A lot of times I'll go into board trainings and the boards will say, well, we make the decisions. You make the policies. The decisions are the procedures. And that's the person that you put in that place. That's your director, that's your principal, or whatever else you want to call that. They're the ones that are making the decisions. Sure.
What's an example of that?
That's a great question. I like that.
I'm asking because I don't know. I'm just trying to get to know.
Yes, we did adopt a hourly wage chart, which hadn't been done for 20 years. So that would be probably most recent. That's what I was trying to think of, most recent.
And what was did that come from a place of, like, the director saying, well, primarily because I'm just trying to understand how it works. Did it come from a place of, like, the director saying, I think we need to do this, or
In this case, I'd say it came from a position of it needed to be done for a long time. We just hadn't been able to get around to it because we had so many other things to get around to. That took a while.
All right, I'm taking you on the road with me because those two were spot on.
Yeah.
And the last item, where did it come from, is incredibly important, because where should it come from? Where do you think it should come from? You knew, I'll put you on the spot.
oh gosh, I don't know.
Can't be wrong here. You can't,
either
but you know, I
the-
won't tell you wrong.
Either the director or us seeing the need. Maybe there's a lot of exits and we're hearing that
Oh,
people are
that's
saying they're not getting paid enough. So
that's good.
I think
That's good.
if you look at this whole thing all together, we got 2 new board members coming on, and I think we're getting a little bit more diversity in that. And, you know, the one that's not here, he's been working with a lot of finances. But Virginia's a retired teacher, and I'm currently a paraprofessional in school.
Mhm.
So where I see that, well, we've seen their practices. And so part of it's, like I said, our diversity in there.
Yeah.
And we call them expert in it.
So let me tell you my answer, because those are 2 spot-on questions. I'm telling you, you do have to go on the road because those are great questions that normally I ask.
Actually, we don't know who she is. This is a plan.
No, it's probably true. So it should come from one of 2 places. It should come from the director saying, we need to take a look at our hourly wage, and we need to put this on the agenda. We can create a subcommittee, whatever else. And then it should go to the full board, and here's a time frame that we should work on it. But it should come from the director to the board, and then the board starts to work on that. Because again, otherwise you're starting to fly too low. You're causing traffic problems in terms of air traffic controllers and what goes on here. So that's really where it should come from. The other place it could come from is looking at your strategic plan and saying, here's our strategic plan. And part of our plan is 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, we need to be looking at our salaries and seeing where they are and if they're competitive and what we should do. And if that's part of the strategic plan, then the obligation goes back to the director to bring that to the board to say, part of our strategic plan is we're going to look at our salaries, we're going to look at our hourly wage. So this is what we need to do. In other words, both ways, coming from there. And that's it should come from there to the board, and then the board should be engaged on it. And it should come from things, including monthly reports of what's going on with staffing. Is there a staffing issue? And yeah, we lose 5 people every month. Well, what do you think that's from? It's from our hourly wage. Okay, what's your recommendation? Not, okay, this is what we're going to do about it. What's your recommendation? Our recommendation is we should look at our hourly wage chart and should do something about it. Okay, then that's what we're going to do. We take that on. That's them asking you your recommendation. Yes. Yeah, that's how it should go.
And unfortunately, because we've been such a small board for so long, this actually came from the last director.
Mhm.
So it's taken us this amount of time to actually get to it.
Yeah, which doesn't matter. I mean, it could be from the last director,
Right.
but your last director wasn't there anymore.
Right.
Which means it should then come from this director, because that should be part of your strategic plan. So this director should be the one that then brings it, because your other director's not there anymore. When I left my school, there are a lot of things I had, and hopefully they're not saying, well, this came from the last guy. I'm not there anymore. That better be coming from the current person that's there. Otherwise, they're working on stuff that shouldn't be worked on necessarily. Different vision, different plans, different things of what should be happening. So always ministry minded. Always in prayer, always guided by the fact that you are in charge of a ministry. And wow, that's a pretty big deal. You have been given this ministry to watch, to oversee, to plan, to guide. And that is something that's pretty powerful. That's like being a pastor and having a whole flock that when you go to work on Sunday, right? Just Sundays. And you see this great big congregation out there, and you're like, wow, that's quite the responsibility. Yeah. And the responsibility is there because, as we know, it's 24/7. And it's about eternity. It's the same thing here. You have a chance to provide that most important thing. That they know Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior, and that's what you want when they leave. When they leave early childhood, when they leave elementary, when they left us in high school. We know we did our job if they knew Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior. Then we also knew there was some icing on top of it if they do some other things, like geometry, biology. Here are some other items. So, responsibilities, review, mission, and purpose. You should always do it. I always love having on the agendas for meetings the mission and the purpose, because again, you're grounded in ministry. That reminds you. That's what it's about. Strategic planning, vision for the future. Again, 75% of what you do should be future focused. Otherwise, you're doing somebody else's job as a board. You're not doing the director's job. Otherwise, you could save salary. I used to tell my board, I could tell you how to save $500,000 a year. Just eliminate me. I had all kinds of options and bonuses and all kinds of good stuff. So, yeah, great. I said, if you want to eliminate that, just let me go and do it. And you can't operate that way. It's not effective. So you have to vision, look at the future, strategically plan, and have a person in place that's able to carry that out, which is why you have an early childhood director. That's why you have a principal. That's what they're doing. That's their call. Sure.
How is reviewing?
Your question's the same. I just want to back up and say, where are we in this process? You know,
Still developing a strategic plan.
do we have a mission and purpose?
Do we have a mission and purpose? Well, let's put it this way, as far as a written mission and purpose at this point in time, no. So this is really where we need to begin,
Well,
yes.
My background can help here. Because I've done a lot of mission,
Right.
purpose, and vision.
So, yeah, yes, that is something.
Yeah, that's really where you want to start, because if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a purpose, everything else you do is not in alignment with your mission and purpose.
What Alan put up there was actually with that. You started
Correct.
talking.
Right.
That's
You need to make sure it follows with the churches too. So you're not,
We have that vision.
there you go.
Again,
That's always good. So, but really, that is the first thing you need to do, because otherwise you're making decisions without mission in mind.
Yeah, it's human nature to, I think, to policies and procedures because they're more task oriented and they're more
Absolutely.
comfortable there. Which is just, I mean, this is a clear roadmap where you start with the policy and you go to the detail.
and there is a written mission in the parent handbook, but right, I was gonna say that's not.
Yeah.
That should be reviewed
Developed-
annually.
yeah, developed by
It should
this-
be reviewed.
this
I need to take
board
you on
and-
the road too.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
usually for a mission and purpose, you review it in 5 years.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, you have your 1, 3, and 5 year plans. And your goals that go along with those. So, yeah, so this is what you're doing. And one of the top things you're doing is ensuring Lutheran distinctiveness, which can be a challenge at times, but you want to make sure you do that. And sometimes the early childhood is even more difficult to do that because you have a lot of aids. You're trying to pull people from all different kinds of directions. So you got to be mindful of that too. How's that accomplished? How do you do that? How does that fit with who we are? How do we accomplish that? So one of those kind of items that's out there. So yeah, this is what you do: develop policies, enrollment, curriculum, discipline, staffing, health and safety, licensing, finance, legal, marketing. Sounds like a lot of handbooks. Now, what would an enrollment policy look like?
We'll see would be like, who we're gonna, like, learning center is open to your family, grades,
Mhm.
that type of thing.
Yep. And it could be like the deposit policy, be part of that. Could be, any discounts, it could be stuff like that. So part of that can carry over to finance a little bit. So that comes here. What's our enrollment policy? Let's take a look at the enrollment policy. Is it working for us? Does it need to be changed? Where do you see kind of areas that aren't working well, so we can rewrite that? Yeah.
Every year we have an issue. Somebody,
Mhm.
we charge people $50, and then they don't come because they don't mind $50, don't bother.
Sure.
So we've kicked around, do we make $200 fee that they get part of that back if they tell us within a certain amount of time, or they have to pay part of their tuition as their deposit that goes to the first month.
Mhm.
Okay, so those are the kind of things that we kick around, and I've talked to kind of the board a little bit about those, and I've talked to Dina a little bit about those. So as the board, I'm kind of talking about in this policy, right? But when I'm talking to Dina about it, how are we going to implement this? Is it harder to do it this way or this way?
That's called procedure, right?
So that's what the question is. So if the board decides which way to do it, and that doesn't take into account, is that going to be easy?
The board sets the policy, and that would be the policy of what are you going to do. The procedure needs to be done at
So
the
is
other
the
level.
policy that we're going to charge parents rent so that they don't have that policy? Because to me, that kind of feels like a procedure, because you know what I mean? Because deciding between those two, is it a refundable $200 deposit, or is it the half month, tuition? I guess this is like the purpose example that I don't understand.
Yeah.
If it's policy decided by the board or if it's procedure decided by the because we're the one that has to write contracts and figuring out how to charge.
Yeah. So the policy would be to really set tuition. Now, this is what the tuition is going to be. And you could ask for a policy if you felt it was needed to guide the policy. I'm recommending the policy be put in place that we charge half the tuition as a deposit. Or you could say that that's your procedure that you do. That's a fuzzy one because it kind of, that one you have to work out in terms of what's beneficial for you. And this is where I would go to my board and I would tell my board, okay, don't step in on this. You just need to be aware this is what we're working through, because we're seeing people leave because $50 isn't a lot of skin in the game. So they don't mind losing $50. So what we're looking at doing is asking that they put down a deposit of one month or whatever, $8,000, whatever it is, that's non-refundable or whatever else. So this is what we're looking at doing. Now, after we kind of sit down and figure this out, then what I would have done is I would have gone back to the board and I would say, here's my recommendation, that we institute a policy, because that protects you and it protects what's going on. It's overarching policy and it's financial in nature, you know, so sometimes I always like that financial piece of things. That the policy then is we're going to require $8,000 as a deposit, but it will go toward your tuition, or $200 as a deposit. But $150 will go toward your tuition, 50 of it's registration. But the $200 non-refundable if you don't attend. And you can put that in this policy. But that's coming from you, and it's having that conversation down, and then it's bringing it to the board if you feel as though it should be policy, and that would help you out. You know, there are times when, well, it could be that, you know, you have, if a family is 30 days behind in their tuition payment, they need to be removed. Okay. Yeah, but okay, that's the policy. But I'm working with this family, and they're good faith and they're paying, and I know the situation that's going on, and that's kind of procedure. And I'd make my board aware. You know, I got 3 families. This is what's going on. Here's our policy, but this is what I'm doing. This is what's happening.
So kind of I'm hearing so that in the kind of our, there's some back and forth. So
There
if
is.
they tell me there's like Tina and I might take it and say, here's how
Mhm.
we can fully implement it.
Sure.
Procedures.
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes at the point of policy, transition between policy and procedure, handoff,
Okay.
you have to get clarification so that
Very true.
communication goes back and forth as you determine whose role this really is. So that's very fair. You do it that way. The other way to look at it is, from an HR perspective, do I want other fingerprints on this?
Yeah.
And if you want other fingerprints on it, just so that it makes you feel comfortable with what your next step is, then again, that's that interface between policy and procedure where it's really unclear whether it should be procedure, whether it should be policy, and you want other fingerprints on it, then it's very fair to then have where does this really belong, because I can see it can go either way. So you have that communication.
Yeah, great point. You know, like tuition, it could be tuition's $5,000 a year, and families are required to pay that. Well, how do they pay it? That becomes a procedure. You know, so you figure out how's the payment coming in. You know, it's supposed to be $5,000. That's our policy. But in terms of procedure, are we using fax? Are we using TAS? Are we a mailbox up there and envelopes, and they're dropping it down? I heard, yeah, TAS just got bought out. It's all crazy now. Yeah, we used to use fax. We're way
It's a nightmare.
It's a tuition collection agency, and they do other things. They're heavy in the schools, but they just they got bought out by another company, and ever since they've gone way downhill in a lot of different ways. All
I
good
like
points.
seeing the marketing on the
Mhm.
communications.
Communications is huge, and marketing is huge too, because you're constantly having to figure out enrollment, right? Because Lutheran schools, typically your financing is coming from two places. That is tuition and tuition. It could be tuition, it could be church support would be the other one. That's typically where it comes from. Yeah. Tuition, yeah. Which is it until you start dropping little notes in the pews, and then all of a sudden you got to do those things. But yeah, I mean we're heavily tuition driven, right? So you lose a few, it's a big hit, which is why that policy and the procedure is so important on how do you make sure that you really bring them in, and what is that breaking point for the dollar amount too. So you have to figure that out. And marketing is incredibly important because marketing goes directly to enrollment. Enrollment goes directly to finance. Finance covers the other things because no margin, no mission.
A couple of things. One, I mean, the director has to be involved with all of those.
Yep.
Especially if you're going to get procedure, which means we have to continue to make sure she's educated or gets those opportunities. But the board is also, the policies involved. So how do we continue to help educate the board and help the board so that everyone's advancing?
Yes. Well, and those are all great questions. Part of it, well, yeah, part of that is, Annette as director, making these things apparent to the board and discussing things like enrollment, what's going on with marketing, ideas and concepts there, licensing, obviously, Annette has early childhood directors conferences, early childhood or educators conference, so a few opportunities to find some of these things and also to help educate the board. There's a little something out there called luthed.org. I'll show you later. There's a great handbook on luthed.org that's specifically for early childhood centers. It talks about staffing, discipline, health and safety, finance, marketing, all of those things. They even give you little samples. And then there's also the district that's happy to come out and do presentations. He is hard to get a hold of, absolutely. And I don't recommend him, but he is willing to come out from time to time and hit on just about all of these. I will tell you this, my least favorite with early childhood is licensing because I gotta that's where I go to Cheryl Hahn and Lee Wagner and I say, hey, Cheryl and Lee, help me out, because early childhood is not really my immense background. I was head of school at a 6 through 12 school. I was a high school principal. I was a high school teacher, a high school coach, high school janitor. So early childhood, I'm picking it up and I'm involved in it. I love it. No, they're all license exempt, basically, not all of them. Yes. Yep. Yeah, you're one of the few. But yeah, most are license exempt. And then, health and safety, we can talk about that. That's always an exciting topic. 5-second rule. It's always important for early childhood. Wait, that's another presentation. I'm sorry. Yes, exactly. But no, we have presentations on enrollment, curriculum. I just had a conversation with Cheryl and Lee on my way down. And we're talking about putting some curriculum out there that's accessible by early childhood centers through Google Docs that we're developing district-wide. We're developing district-wide early childhood center framework that's being done. But yeah, we're in fact coming up, we're doing different topics too that are out there via video presentation, interactive. You can log into some Zoom presentations former director of schools at the national level, Bill Cochran, and I just did one not long ago on effective boards, interestingly enough. There's one coming up that I'm doing with an admissions person. She was international admissions person for the Lutheran High School Association in St. Louis, and we're going to be discussing really international enrollment and admissions, and then also bringing Mandarin to early childhood centers, preschools, elementary schools, and high schools through our program. So November 8th, a little lunch and learn from 12 to 1. We'll do a little Ni Hao Zhong Wen program discussion. We also have some coming up on marketing. There'll be one coming up on that topic. Enrollment. There's a few admissions people that I'm doing one with in the near future. So watch for some online presentations.
All these policies are specific to early childhood.
Mhm.
One thing that I don't see on it, that's why I'm saving for my question,
Mhm.
is things relative to your enrichment of your teachers,
Professional development.
Salary, selection process.
Staffing would be your professional development, and your pay scale and benefits would go under finance. So absolutely, this is dropped out as it should be with that. And you can call it different things too. I mean, you don't have to stick with sports, but as a good HR person, you hit on the right areas right there, right? You need pay scale information. In fact, Concordia Plan Services is just getting ready to roll out a online pay calculator for all different kinds of commission positions, and I think they might include early childhood in that. If they do, that would be outstanding, because you plug in, like the number of hours, you plug in some other things, degree, level, years of experience, and it spits out a range for you. Not one specific number, but a range, including geographical calculations. So what would it be in Columbia versus what would it be in Boonville? Find out. There's one out there right now for the ordained. So,
Would record retention and that going to be legal?
it would. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. That would go under legal. Kind of chuckle because I got an email today about record keeping policy, what it needs to be and what it looks like. Very important, because that's always a big one. How long do you keep your records? Yeah, well, otherwise you fill up those filing cabinets, don't you? But yeah, and it's not. Yeah, sometimes a well-placed fire pit can be beneficial sometimes. It's different for early childhood than it is, you get into elementary. You have a lot of records for early childhood. Yeah. Employment records. Yeah. Yeah, you got to play bingo. So you need the I-9s. Yeah. No, a lot of those, yes, you have to keep for a long time, but thankfully not as many as when you move on up. So, yeah, that's kind of your outline. You should have a handbook. Again, if you don't have one, that should be right there in your mission statement, be in the front of it. Guides everything that you do. Should talk about the responsibilities of board members. One of the things that should happen is you have a new board member that comes on. You should onboard that new board member. And one of the ways to onboard them is to give them your board handbook and say, here you go. And you have 5 minutes to read it. And we're going to quiz you on it. Now, you need to give it to them ahead of time. Part of responsibility being a board member is the material. And you're prepared for meetings. You come to meetings ready to go. And you can't be an effective board member if you haven't been onboarded by having the handbook and knowing what's going on. And in the handbook, it should have the job descriptions of board members, what they look like, what is an effective board member. That should be one of your questions initially. There should be a job description for that. You should have in there everything from your strategic plan, a mission statement, your goals, names and contact information, the other board members, your director's name, your pastor's name, all this should be in there because you're onboarding, right? You know about our onboarding, and you better do a good job of it. Otherwise, if you don't onboard correctly, they're behind the whole time. It takes a long time to catch back up. So. Mhm.
Since as church, should we wait until the congregation does the visioning for the entire church and then we cascade down because they should really complement each other?
They should, yes, they should. I don't know what's everyone think.
I mean, I think aside from some word tweaking, how fundamentally different might an existing mission be from a revisit? We could probably, start work on it after and maybe tweak it as that's maybe in conjunction.
That was my thought, exactly. That's where I was. I was
So,
like 3 years from now.
My answer would be never wait. If you are waiting for the church to do theirs, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. And you don't have time to wait. It should be there. And it should always be dynamic. It should be in flux, right? Because you should constantly be looking at it and examining it and seeing whether or not it's doing what you need it to do.
In an ideal world.
Exactly. So don't wait. Don't wait on these things.
And part of the reason I asked the question is we may be asked.
Sure.
Just logically, you would think, well, you should wait till church.
Yeah.
But it does exist today though, so it's more like a circle as opposed to a linear process.
It should be,
So-
it should be a dynamic process. That's why you have a 1 through 5, and some have a 10.
Mhm.
I want to say that visiting at the church experience is kind of deciding what the church wants to do, of which one part of that might be the learning center, but the learning center has to have its own vision of what kind of learning center we want. Well, don't you think?
Well, the church sets the policy.
There you go. See, that it. Yeah, you got it down.
It is,
They
and
set the overall
the very big part of churches. It's almost, it's already set there.
Yeah.
If I were the church, though, I would hope that you, as an early childhood center, have your mission, because I should be asking you, what's your mission? Because otherwise, how can I effectively develop the churches? And then if the churches does change that, well, then what are you doing? You're revisiting it anyway. So it should be dynamic, and you should be able to tweak it and change it. So they go together. You're one, right? Which is why it's always important to market first and foremost in the church. Let the congregation know this is important work. So yeah, handbook responsibilities, ministry descriptions for positions. That's good to know. No, you should know when you come on. What is the director's position description? It should be in the handbook. You should be able to see that right away as a board member. Okay, well now I know what a net does, and here are all the topics, including other things as assigned.
Is that like
Should be, yeah. Should be a chair. Should be a secretary taking the notes. So you have those.
We currently have a chair.
Okay.
Okay.
It's great to have a sample agenda in there. It's great to have an agenda that's published before a meeting too, so that you're ready to go. So when you get to the meeting, the agenda's been out. It's been out for at least a week. Everybody's seen it. I'm always a big fan of an hour and a half board meeting. And if you have an hour and a half board meeting, if you have the agenda made out right, and you've got in one column what the topics are, what's going to be discussed, you put the point person for each topic in a middle column, and you put a time limit on the right-hand column. And then if you're going over that 10-minute time limit, you have to stop as a board and vote to continue the discussion on that. And if you vote no, tabled. You're done. You're moving on to the next item. And you'll find that the important stuff starts to raise to the top. because it's easy for boards to just talk about whatever and have 3, 4, 5 hour meetings because there's no limit. So it's good to have a limit that has focus for your meeting, and the cream rises to the top of what really needs to be talked about. And it's great to have a point person who introduces it. And if there's material that's needed beforehand, have it out so that when you come to that meeting, you've read the article, you've seen the Excel spreadsheet with hourly wage and salaries or whatever else. You've had the material that you need to have so that when you get there and that topic comes up, it's an educated discussion that's on point. And you're not asking for, what about this? What about that? Because that's what prolongs it, right? Have it on point. Expectations of members. That goes back to that job description, right? For the board. And also understanding the job description of the director and, having, I always put in there, I put job description of the teachers in there, but that's just because I always find that to know kind of what teachers did. We had an employee handbook that I put in ours all the time, and I always recommend that because it's good as a board member to have that. As you can look in the employee handbook, and that has all job description. It has the requirements and other items in there. And then you might want to have parent-student handbook or your early childhood parent handbook in there. And all those are things. But one of the things I recommend is August, kind of new school year-ish, right? Everybody's going back and all that good stuff. In August, during your first meeting there, you're doing onboarding and you're changing out all of those manuals and handbooks to the newest edition. That becomes part of it. And you're making sure everybody has the latest and greatest with the correct dates on it. That becomes part of that first meeting. Those are top items. And annual training and onboarding. Again, that is an important process to onboard any new members. Annual training is good because it continues to discuss what's going on and what effective boards look like. And that's part of that training and onboarding process. It's hard to be one and done. So it's good every year, especially get 1, 2 new members, or it's good for current members, just have a refreshing course. Policy versus procedure. Excuse me. A decision deals with an immediate issue while a policy determines action over a long period of time. So when in your meeting, you're talking about something, I always encourage somebody brings up the question, is this policy or procedure? Are we in the weeds and we're making a decision on an immediate issue? If we are, we're not acting as a board. Are we looking at a policy that's going to be in place over a long period of time because that's what boards do? That's what this is about? Then good, we're acting as a board. Call the question. Yeah, well, let me take you in a few different things. One of the great things about early childhood through grade 8, we have them for 13,869 hours. Now, granted, church, we have them 5 days a week and all that good stuff, and church is different than what the childhood or elementary school is. But you think about the impact possibility that we have and the impact possibility of bringing them to church too and getting them in the seats and having them there for both is tremendous. And again, if they leave singing those songs knowing that Jesus loves them, this I know, Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior, we've done it. So excellent Lutheran schools, and I would say this is the case early childhood all the way through senior citizen centers. Academic excellence, well, appropriate excellence in early childhood center. Play incorporated, what's the program look like? What is excellence for an early childhood center? That's what you should be talking about as a board, right? What does early childhood center excellence look like? And to me, when you talk academic excellence, in terms of early childhood center, you're talking about fine motor development, you're talking about activity, you're talking about play and interaction and social development. That's that excellence. Administrative performance. You have a director. That's part of your discussion too. You know, how are we supporting the director to make sure that what you need, you have? So we have to evaluate administrative performance. You should be doing, as a board, an annual review. I always recommend one in the fall or one in first semester, kind of. You know, one sometime December, January-ish, and then again sometime around end of May. And the end of May is kind of the formal one. I always recommend in those reviews that you ask the director, tell me what your professional goals are for this year. What would you like to do? And you have a job description, right? It should be in the board handbook. And that should match up to an evaluation tool, because you should always know what you're being evaluated on. And part of that evaluation process is, how can we as a board help you as a director? What is it that we can do? First and foremost, of course, that is lift you and all the other teachers and other people and cooks and aides and everybody else in prayer constantly. Which, by the way, you know, what really goes a long way is at a board meeting, especially this time of year, Thanksgiving time, you know, you sit down and the board writes an individual thank you, and you pray for every single one of them. You say, we prayed for you tonight in the board meeting. You put that in their box, and they come in the next day and they find it. It goes a long way. A long way to make those connections. It's always fun. See the faces. Culture. What is the culture of the school? You know, what is it like? What culture of the staff? You know, how is it? What's happening there? What can we do to develop that, to grow that, so that we know that we have a high functioning place here? Tell me, how do the kids get along? You know, what's happening out on the playground? What's happening in the hallways? What's happening in the classrooms? What's happening in playtime? Which hopefully is always. Finance, no margin of omission. You got to be aware, right? Governance, how are we functioning? You better be self-evaluating as a board too. And that means individual evaluations, group evaluations as a board. How are we doing? Are we flying at 40,000 feet, or are we getting in the weeds? How's our policies? How's our onboarding going? Take a good look. Should always be out there. Instruction. How are we doing with our teaching staff? You know, is there turnover? Is there turnover in aides? What does staffing look like? What's our pay look like? Are we losing them because they're going down the street to some other early childhood center that's paying $5 more an hour? What's it look like? What's it look like for the future? You know, what do we need to be competitive so that we get the best, so that we can be the best? Master teachers. How do we develop professional development? How do we create teachers that are at their best? Do they have what they need? Do they have what they need to grow professionally? Do they have conference time? Do they have time to watch webinars? Do they have time to read? Do they have time to play? Because I'm telling you, as an early childhood teacher, when I say do they have time to play, they need time to regroup and refresh. It takes a lot out of you when you're dealing with kids who are just constantly on the go. So you yourself have to find the time to play to make sure that mentally and physically you're ready to go. Mission, purpose, vision. Notice the two at the bottom, and then spiritual development, all that tied together. That is all your foundation on which everything else is built, right? It also pretty much looks like, in some ways, an administrator's report to the board, what's going on, so that you're aware of what's happening in the school. Tweaked a little bit, needs of early childhood. So, luthed.org should be one of your friends there. You've seen this governing board resource, page 15 to 16. I always point out because it has a school board development plan, how you should be professionally developing yourselves as school board members. There is another document out there, as I said before, aimed strictly at early childhood, called In His Hands. That is also on luthed.org. If you go to luthed.org, it is open to the public. It's not password protected except for Two spots on it. One is to do searches for CMFs, and the other one is a certain section of NLSA. Otherwise, it's wide open. You can go out there anytime.
Is there a job board on that?
There is no job board on there. There is a so if you want to look for teachers, or if you want to post a position, the way to post a position is to send that to me, the district office. We'll put it on the Missouri District website. You can do a search for possible teachers, which you need a password. That's one of the areas it is password on there. Then you call me in and I teach you how to do a search on that. And then there's also something else out there that's not really sanctioned by the national office or the Missouri District, but on Facebook, I should stop the recording. On Facebook, there's a group out there called Luth Ed Jobs. And Luth Ed Jobs was started by an administrator at Renton Prep in Washington, a Microsoft school that's a Lutheran school out there. And it is a place that many people list positions, including right now. I just looked at it today. There are two schools looking for early childhood people. And it's also, I saw somebody there today who's in Central Illinois District looking to be a director at an early childhood facility. She put herself out there and said, hey, does anybody know of any positions? That's on Facebook. It's a closed group. So you just ask to be a member, and you know how that works. Somebody will click you through pretty quickly. If not, let me know and I'll click you through. But that's a good place to go to. And then, all of that is out there. Now, who does that? Who would post a position?
We need a policy.
Yeah, and your policy should be, who would post a position? Yeah, that's who would post it. So, unless you're looking for a director, then as a board, you do that. Yep. So, otherwise, yes, the director would be putting that out there and be posting the position, saying, here you go. Same thing if you wanted something posted on the Missouri District website, and that would call me up and say, hey, can we post something? And I'll say, absolutely, you got to fill out this form because we can't do anything without a form. And then I'll email you the form, you fill it out, you send it back, and then we put it up. That's the way it works. A few things there. Serving, instead of speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the true body of Him who is the head, that is Christ. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. You work it all out in the board meeting, right? When you're in here, it's that behind the scenes where the questions get asked, policies get made, procedures get done, reports come back, the things that are going well that you lift up, and those things that, hey, I've got a concern here, I've got a concern there, just to let you know. And this is how I'm addressing it. And then there could be a time or two where you say, and I need some help. And that's kind of it. It's not necessarily always I need help, but you got to be aware when you step in and when you don't. Usually that's based on the director. Key principle, you are a member of the board only when the board is in session or if you're carrying out a specific task assigned by the board. In other words, what's said here stays here. That is one of the biggest detriments to boards, because a lot of times whatever is said here goes out from here. And that's just disruptive to everything. There was times way back when I was first ahead of school, I had a board, 24 people. And there were times by the end of the board meeting, my office was right across the hallway from the meeting. I go from the board meeting to my office, and I'd already have an email or a phone call from somebody that knew what happened in the board meeting. So,
Sorry.
Take a video of that? It's already on there. I got to erase that part. You'll see the section out there. Yeah, exactly. It needs it. It was like, seriously? I couldn't even get to my office to sit down already. There's a phone call. So you got to be confident. That's part of that ethical behavior by boards, that you know what's said here stays here. It's got to be that way, because you deal with some hard issues sometimes, right? Difficult issues in terms of maybe there's releasing somebody. You're bringing somebody here and you're saying, look, so-and-so, they're just not, their evaluation wasn't good, this didn't happen, I'm going to release them. Or, financially, we're struggling, we have these issues. Well, you don't want that out there. That happens in here, you know, and Annette, as director, she's the one responsible for doing the evaluations of all the employees, of all the teachers and the aides and everything else. There was a board one time that I was doing one of these presentations, and they said, yes, so our principal does all the evaluations, and they put them in the file, and then we go into the file and we look at them. I said, well, yeah, if you want to get a good attorney, if you want to be sued, go for it. And then I'll be back in doing a different kind of presentation, right? I mean, you know HR, so that's, no, there's privacy issues here and personnel records. That's not the way it works. So you want to be careful, or they're going in, they're looking at, you know, there's some, I heard about this 4-year-old that's really rambunctious, and I want to see what's going on. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull a file. I'm going to look at this and go for it. And then I'll be down talking about legal ramifications and how much you're going to pay, and tell you the very first thing you should do is call your insurance company. You're going to be sued. So, gotta think all those things through. Sometimes we forget to fly at 40,000 feet. That's always something good to remember. Misunderstanding of roles, look at what school board members are not. You're not a school complaint line. You're not an advocate for special interests. You're not supervisors of personnel. And you're not managers of school daily operations. That is everything that you're not. And a lot of times what school boards think that they are, because you feel as though, okay, the board's supposed to run things. That's what you gotta do. No, not. You aren't any of those things. School complaint line, somebody comes to you and says, I don't like what Annette's doing over here, and this is really messed up, you know, the playground lineup and who goes first, that's just craziness. Do something about that. And you know, a lot of times as a board member, your inclination is say, you're right, I'm going to do something. I'm going to go talk to her about that. No, what you're going to do is what? Absolutely. You're going to say, hey, go talk to them. And you know what? Our playground looks awesome, doesn't it? There's somebody good. And those kids, when they're lined up, you should see the smiles on their faces when they're going out. Because your biggest job is to be what? Cheerleader for the school. So you redirect that to a positive conversation, saying how great it is. Absolutely. And then you might want to give Annette a call and say, hey, just a heads up. So-and-so talked to me, and I told them to go and see you. Because some other rule out there is the director should never allow the board to be surprised, and the board should never allow the director to be surprised. And it also helps Annette because the parent will probably say, I just talked to so-and-so on the board, and they said that this was messed up too. Now, I know that never happens, right? But if you didn't give Annette the heads up and say, hey, I told them they just need to go to you, I didn't say anything. And this is how we handle it. In fact, I talked about all these positive things. FYI to you, in case they come in. Well, now you're sitting there knowing, okay, that's not how it went down, but let's have some fun. Let's see where this conversation's going. Always good times. Never issue minority opinions when you leave here. It's a group decision. Supreme Court 9-0 decisions. They're not the 5-4s. There is no dissenting opinion that gets written. Implement board policy unless designated to do so. You are one voice. Always. Be enthusiastic, advocate for the school, pray for staff, students, families, all those things. No. Devote the time necessary for board activities. Commitment to the school's mission. Hopefully you know the mission statement coming up here. Work on it quickly, but diligently, along with your strategic plan. Act, make decisions based on understanding of board policies and procedures. Board discussions remain confidential. All this stuff really,
Question about that.
yes.
How do you handle notes?
That's in.
Well, board discussions are confidential. What about your documentation practices of the meetings?
Well, they're not all confidential. So you have an open session and you have an executive session. So notes on the open session, you talk about the things that are generally talked about. And those can be seen, right? And you don't have to really worry about that because you're not talking about anything confidential. We're talking about strategic planning. You're talking about, hey, what's happening? What are the highlights? What's going on? Now, if there's a topic that is confidential, let's say it's a personnel issue. Somebody makes a motion to go into executive session, and seconded, you all vote to go into executive session. You talk about it. The notes in executive session are minimal, meaning we went into executive session, talked about an issue, and then we came out of executive session. And those notes go into a separate file because those are confidential. And we don't have the sunshine law that public schools have. So you don't have to worry about, pulling all those things out and everything's got to be public knowledge. So two different files. And in executive session, you can't take a vote on anything. Votes have to be done in open session. So in open session, then you go and say, well, a motion is made to terminate so-and-so, or at least so-and-so from their position. And then it's the vote. But no discussion, because all that discussion happened in executive session. So one's private, one's open. Veteran board members, you should always be evaluating. New board members, when they come on, should be evaluating as well. Saying, this is what I see, this is what's happening, I think this is what we need to work on. Because you're fresh eyes, right? You bring fresh ideas, fresh eyes, you're seeing what's going on, you make recommendations like that. At the end, all board members, again, should evaluate themselves and should evaluate the entire board. A great document for that would be Google form to do that, or SurveyMonkey if you have SurveyMonkey or something. Just a quick little boom, boom, boom. Rank this, how effectively we stay on task, this, that, onboarding, all that kind of stuff. But that's always good to do on an annual basis. We know this, understand our mission, always serving Jesus Christ first and foremost, providing quality education and a quality early childhood center. And really to do that, and this is where you ask Annette too, what does an excellent Lutheran early childhood center look like? What is it? Right? Because if you don't know, and if you haven't been to other ones, how do you know? What's it look like? Exactly. And at the August meeting, you're already doing what at the August meeting? There's two things you should be doing. Onboarding and new handbooks, updating all of your materials and everything, right? And hopefully you're also, at least in August, and it should be maybe a little bit more frequently, kind of depending on, walk the facility. You kind of know what it looks like, right? So you have to walk around. That's part of that onboarding. It's part of the starting the new kind of year, the new session, is to take a walk around. What's it look like? And for Annette to say, this is what excellence looks like over here. This is what it looks like over here. Here's some of the highlights. Pay attention to these things because it's why we have a mural on the wall. And this is why we do this over here.
Do you have in your experience a school that you would view as being what good looks like?
Yeah. There are good schools out there, and there are excellent schools out there, and there are schools that struggle. But it all depends too, because you have to remember a few things. Resources matter, location matters. Are you fulfilling what you have here? All those things matter. So that's where first I would ask the director, what does excellence look like here? What would we see? And then, take a look elsewhere. There's video clips all over the place online. There's early childhood people out there online that will do webinars and sessions and show you all this stuff, and they'll talk to you about, this is why we do this, or this is what this center looks like. And then there are some directors, here in the Missouri district will say, well, that true for them, that's it. For us, that misses this mark. So you have to know that too. Always know who you are. Because who we are as a Lutheran school is going to be different than a lot of those other schools out there. So what is excellence for us? But you should capture that. What's it look like? And you need to know what it is, because to be a cheerleader, you have to be able to rattle those things off. This is why we're excellent. Look at all these things that are happening. Singing these songs, leaving those notes. Proactive. You need to be proactive, not reactive. Reactive, you're doing the director's business. Be proactive. 75% of the time on the future. Do not live in the past. The horse is dead, let it be. Bury it. Not presiding over the present. And board's responsible for the future. That 25% that you don't see up there, have a great anniversary. That 25% you don't see up there is really Annette giving her report, telling you as a board what's happening. 75% though is then taking that and saying, okay, this is what we had to work with. Let's forecast this out now. Where are we going with that? That's what you want to do. Done in strategic planning. A lot of that can be done through accreditation plan, improvement plans that you have. Focus on the goals of the meeting. You should always have the goals that you're focusing on. Goals should be coming from Annette that, here are the items that we need to be working on. I'll talk about that as a board. Policymakers, we talked about policy being different than procedure, and anytime something is done, it doesn't become precedent. So, you are promoting the school, you're supporting the board, the staff, the director. You're managing conflicts of interest, because those can pop up. So you want to make sure you're aware of any conflict of interest. And you make decisions based on what's best. And notice this one, and this is true again for early childhood as well. Maybe not quite your children's children, it's taking them a little bit longer, but you're thinking 75% in the future. So you're not looking at what's going on necessarily today. That's that 25%. That's that report, and how can we help you? And this is what's needed. You're looking down the road to where we can go and what we can be. Fiscal integrity, you definitely have to have that. Again, no mission, no margin. This is where I talked about the open meetings versus executive session. You know what? Different types of notes. Don't have them. Believe it or not, we have schools sometimes that will have, the board will have a secret meeting. They don't tell some members of the board, or they don't tell the director or the principal or whatever else. And then guess who comes in? I come in and I sit down and I say, no, this is not how we operate. This is how an effective board works. You got to have meetings like this. If you're starting to do stuff like that, we really have some significant issues, and we need to work on that. So yeah, no, amazing, isn't it? That happens.
That's off of your list. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know, good question. So
I'm assuming you're not including the meeting to go over the director's evaluation, to write the director's evaluation.
No.
That's secret meeting.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, because you're all together, and the director knows that you're meeting to do that. So you're all together. What happens though sometimes is they do meet about a director, they meet about a principal, but they don't tell the principal the director. And then later, 2 months later, it's, well, this went on and at that meeting, and they said, what meeting?
With the agenda, if we can back up,
Sure.
just, because the school runs on a calendar itself and has certain needs that pop up at certain times of the year, would there not be like guidelines as far as, like you already mentioned, this is what you should be doing each August week? Would there not be other timelines, like this is the time in which we should really consider salaries, because 3 months from now we will be considering increases? Is there other guidelines, other than just that August meeting?
Yeah, no, there always are, and that's where you get with your director and you start developing those guidelines. You say, okay, now when do you need to know salary information by? When does your hiring take place?
And then you
Yeah, exactly. Enrollment numbers. When do you get the re-enrollments? When does that happen? What do the re-enrollments tell you? Do 98% of re-enrollments come, or historically is it 85%? And then so that all comes from there. Great question though, because you have different things at different times, and that's where you kind of sit down and you chart it all out. You say, okay, well, it's going to be a highlight at this time. That's going to happen at this time.
Yeah, even if you just put it in, you know, this quarter, you know, just like,
Yeah, absolutely. That's always good. We talked about, no surprises, the executive session. I won't go too much into this.
so all the board, so when the board meets, does the board all include me if the board is meeting?
Yes,
So,
yes. You are, so your early childhood director, principal, whatever you call that, they are ex officio on the board.
what will the meetings?
Executive sessions too.
Okay.
Yeah, the only time you exclude your early childhood director at a meeting is you'll go into executive session to discuss salary or to discuss, evaluation. If you're discussing evaluation of you, then they would bring, you might do that, but then you bring that in and go over the evaluation. You do it at that point. Otherwise, Annette is always here. The director's always in the meetings. They're always in open and executive session. The only time that they are not is normally during pay discussions for the director.
If you're discussing a personnel issue,
Mhm.
would it be which is people who need to know, or would it be the entire school board?
It's the entire board. That's where confidentiality is so vital. It's the entire board. You function as a board, always. And if it's a personnel item, and that's bringing it to you, that can't vote on it, she will recommend. And then as a board, if your early childhood director, your principal is recommending something,
Yeah.
typically that's the action that you take.
And those would be what we're just discussing, things that should be in the policy. Yeah, so along those same lines then, so for like communications and stuff, so because I never know exactly what to copy my board on, what to let, like, one is that the person never be surprised that they should never surprise me.
Mhm.
So I never know what to copy the board on, or if they know, or if they should be copying me on things, or if they're copying and then I don't know, or so is it always just they only meet and then I'm always there and then they don't email each other, or I always email them, or you know what I mean? I don't know exactly how that.
So it is policy, yeah. And typically, the board's not emailing one another unless you're talking about policy and you're doing that via email before the board meeting. And if that's the case, then yes, you're ex officio member of the board, so you're included. If it's a parent issue or concern, or if it's a staff issue or concern, then they should not be emailing one another. It should be pointing back to you and saying, this is yours, this is procedural, this is why you're a director, this is you're handling it. And in terms of, what would you be emailing or CCing the board on? Well, really nothing unless it's a policy matter that the board's having a discussion with and you're going emailing back and forth.
Let me give you an example. So we're adding back to two of our classes.
Mhm.
So I'm working with the manager. So he's been giving me updates. So it's kind of just it's a facility upgrade. So do I let them know? So, there was emails from back and forth about that with him. Do I let them know along the way when I hear information from him, or do I just wait and just give that to them all at once in a board meeting?
So
Give them
For all at once.
It's all at once. So you don't
Yeah.
want to basically get
No.
emails from them. You just want to get like one summary.
Right.
I guess that's what I never know. I think I'm trying not to.
the only
Right,
time,
or anything.
Unless it makes the decision that we have to make.
Yeah.
If it's just for
Or
information.
they're saying, oh, this, I want another fingerprint on this.
Right.
exactly. The only time I would include the board in that is if there was some snag that was hit that was going to raise the cost or delay the project completion, something significant. Otherwise, no, they know it's been approved, you're overseeing it, you're having a discussion, and that's basically it. You know, it's yeah, and then next board meeting you update on it and say what's going on, unless there's a significant event that happened. You know, that oh the during the construction they hit a pipe and everything flooded. Yeah, then yeah, absolutely. Just FYI, just so you know. But yeah, the other stuff, no. I mean, that's why they have somebody that's doing the day-to-day stuff. Yeah, and yes, I mean the only time the director's not at a board meeting, executive or open, and they're there, they're just sitting out, you know, outside the room when you have the salary discussion for the director, not for everybody else, because they're integral to making the determination of salary for everyone else for that function.
I'd also add, and I know you and I have talked about this before, you're very careful with confidential legality stuff. But before you email anything that might have some legal ramifications, I make a phone call first before you start emailing. In my past life, I've seen things just go back and forth email. It's like, oh my God, this stuff is all discovered.
It's always better to make a phone call than just put something in email. You know, that's a very good point. You'll notice a lot of times my email, if you go back to when I was the head of school, there are emails that say very little about anything because a lot of times it's a phone call, or you might see an email from me that says, call me.
Right.
Yeah, I've got a lot of them that say call me. That's about it. So it's funny when you look at that.
So I'm assuming also likewise that if it's a board matter that we need to be aware of and know about, then other people shouldn't be back to it.
No. No, so, and again, that's director and that's board members. That's the only people that you include in that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's it. Yeah. The only thing everybody needs to know is everything's great.
That's right.
And that's, you know, that's the sausage being made behind the scenes, right? Tastes good when you put it in a bun, but you don't want to see it.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah, unified group, support decisions, confidentiality, no surprises. Board member only in session, best for the school, not your personal situation, which makes sense. Always work in partnership with the administrator. Formal evaluations, keep the administrator's job description current so they know what's going on and what the evaluation process is going to be. Work with the administrator talking about their goals and what they are so that you are aware of those, and that becomes part of that evaluation. Helps direct what's going on for the school year. Always be in the Word. Always pray for the school staff, the students, the families, wisdom and guidance as a board. You know, avoid gossip. Always have a biblical response to things. Be supportive of the staff. There's typically an appeals process for things that go on because that's policy. So, you can use some committees sometimes to do things. That's definitely possible. It also helps you sometimes to vet new board members because they may want to see what it's like before they actually commit and get on. Annually orient board members, provide that policy manual. Go over that policy manual as a board, and every year be reflective of what work you're doing that school year, what your goals are. You know, you ask the director, you ask that, what are your goals? If I'm in that, I'd ask, what are your goals? And you should expect her to ask that because you want to have those. You want to have goals for the board as well.
Do you have there's all kinds of goals. Do you have a set? Do you use SMART goals or
Yeah. Yeah. So I always say do what works for you, but yeah, I'm a big fan of SMART goals. I have I'll send sometimes people a professional growth plan that will have goals, examples and stuff. Sometimes, I would say it's healthy if the board provides a goal or something, and if the person provides a goal or two, then it's set. Don't go beyond 3. 2 goals are nice. 3, okay. 4 or more becomes unattainable and cumbersome, and the evaluation process should be 2 goals and a match-up evaluative tool with the job description. That's how it should be. Different types of boards. You can see this one I sent it to you, but you want to be in the sweet spot in the middle. You want to be a governing board, not a working board that does everything, gets involved in day to day. You don't want to manage because, again, your hands are too involved. You don't just want to be here and ratify everything and say, okay. And you don't want to be a failing board. You want to be right there in the sweet spot. So there we go. Work within the structure. Do his work, not your agenda. Keep confidentiality. Know that there is a chain of command. With complaints, if it's a rule, it goes to administration. If it's a person, Matthew 18. If it's policy, it redirects to the board, which is always pretty easy to remember. The director gives you at your board meeting kind of a monthly dashboard, a monthly sense of this is what's happening. That's at 25% again. This is what's going on. This is the good, the bad.
Are there certain metrics that
are? That I would say figure out what works for your school. So the metrics would be things like staffing, finance, enrollment, highlights. Give me good things, because remember, we're all cheerleaders. Give me some highlights so that when I go out, I'm not giving the same old, same old. Give me some new stuff. I need some new material. So give me those highlights. Give me those quick hitters.
on the dashboard?
Mhm.
A dashboard could actually be publicized before the board, so that
Absolutely.
members can come and look, oh, look, attendance is up. Right.
Okay.
Maybe some doesn't make sense, but there are others that people would be interested
Absolutely. Figure out, and I say just like your car. When I hop in my car tonight, I've got a tire that constantly needs air in it. I don't want to look at the nail or anything. Heaven forbid I take it in, but I wait until it pops up. I'll get this big exclamation point. I'll say, yeah, the tire needs air again. Well, that's what the director brings to you in terms of dashboard is what are those things that are popping up here that's a concern. Oil light came on, or the tire needs air, or something else, or I'm going down the highway tonight and I have that thing called a speedometer that I try to keep within 90 or something. 60, always. So, but it's meant to be that quick read of what's going on, right? And then if something, pops up. So a lot of times on dashboard, when you read of what our dashboard items are, enrollment, staffing, finance, whatever else, what's good sometimes if you highlight some things in yellow, or if you highlight it in red, so visually the board knows, or if it's highlighted in green, that should be your usual color, then it's great. Good to go. Yeah. And those metrics are good, but agree to those, what they are. And some of those are easy to talk about. Okay. Other items? Yeah. You all good? You're oriented now? You ready to go? You still need your mission statement. You still need your handbooks. You still need some of those
We got a
items.
lot we need to work on together.
Yeah, but you have good direction, right?
Yeah.
Because right now, you already know we've got to work on the mission. We need to work on our purpose, our
Plus, I
vision.
can't get all the copies of all this stuff together because upstairs in my office. Upstairs.
Is that why we met down here?
No, I mean upstairs in my office.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't go upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay, we use some of those things, but we don't have all of them. We don't have those.
Mhm. Yeah, which means you've got your direction,
Correct?
right?
We have some
So that's
policies
good.
that we've adopted recently. We don't have policies.
Do we have a vision?
No, that's
That-
what I'm
that'll
saying.
actually-
This has
Yeah.
been,
That'll actually be fun. Vision
Right.
can be fun.
Right.
Yeah, it is fun. Yeah, you got some expertise there to.
Correct. Correct. So I said, we, and the part of the reason for expanding the board here finally.
Mhm.
It took a lot, but I actually wanted to table it and wait for the next board meeting, or to the next AOB meeting, but that didn't happen. It didn't happen.
So glad it
So
didn't.
it got passed, so.
Okay, so it sounds like we have information.
So, we have a lot of work to do. as a church.
And I would also recommend that next month on your agenda, you put on there the dashboard and then that says, okay, here are my dashboard items. Yeah.
Dashboards are
Topics.
cool. They, when people want to know how are you doing, people write. should be like this. I'm used to it being red or green, you know, and we can talk about the red ones, you know, how can we get that to be green? What do we need to change? So I'm a big proponent of dashboards.
Yeah. Just remember, everybody has a role. As we like to say sometimes, stay in the lanes. You know, when you don't stay in lanes, that's when accidents occur.
So is this the board you said we're adding to? Is that us too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Carol and you are the new additions.
Okay.
And then Mark was not unable to come tonight.
Okay.
His father went to the hospital today. So he ended up in St. Jude.
Well, I think it's Pastor Thiem. Is he on the board? Is he an ex officio to the board as well? That's
He's an
typical.
ex-officio. But he doesn't- and
So you got
actually all year.
Pastor Thiem and Annette are both ex officios.
Okay.
Which again, that's a good question because I would do that next meeting too. Is list all the board members and contact information.
Now,
It's all
ex
work.
officio just means you don't vote.
They vote.
Yeah. Not voted. But they're there for all discussions in both open and executive session.
And then Virginia, are you the chair of the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's president.
Okay. And who's the secretary?
Secretary is Karen, and Mark is currently finance.
Okay.
But we need to talk about that as well. The other two positions that we recognized, the places we need is a human resources type person and facilities coordination type person, trustees. And Mark actually would like to move to that position. Certainly his background knowledge, and then he actually Karen still wants to stay as secretary, and I would gladly give up the chairperson position and stay with finance, but I don't think we either would want the chairperson position at this point in time.
All that doesn't seem,
Yeah, but we would like for you to take the finance position. Now, the new tuition, new budget will be in place technically when you come on in January. But then, and both Mark and I have worked with the budget in the past, and we certainly can, the board has. We can help fill you in on what you might need to when you work with them then on the budget.
okay.
Yeah. Which is most important because typically on a budget, you have your director bringing the budget to a finance subgroup, and then that's where you discuss it. But it's in the hands of the director to create a budget, bring it to the finance subcommittee, and then that's where it all gets kind of
But if you
hashed
decide you'd like
out.
to be the chairperson, I'd love to be that. I love the budgeting stuff. Unfortunately, the chairperson part requires a 3-hour meeting once a month for the director.
They need to go to 90-minute meetings.
I wish. Oh, I wish.
They need to follow your rules.
Oh, I
He's a Harvard Business Review guide to meetings. Best thing ever. Highly recommended.
Virginia knows your numbers.
We've got, I would say, that I used my company for consensus, to get consensus quick discussion on the time limit, like what you said. We call it the 5 fingers.
Oh, yeah, we do that too.
Oh, you do the 5 fingers too?
Absolutely. 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Yeah, where are you?
Where are you?
I used to do that in the classroom.
Then maybe
Check
you
for
need to be the
understanding.
chairperson, so you can come to that
Yeah.
3-hour meeting and
Well, I can teach some procedural things. So, but yeah, the 5 fingers.
Yep.
You know, tells you real quick with that discussion with people's heads on,
Absolutely.
and if you can involve.
We got the concept. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
What happens at 4 and 5?
4 and 5, you know that it's, well, when they throw up a 4 or 5, you know that they've gotten it.
It's
The 1s and 2s, you know that are lost, and get you. Plus, also in a classroom setting, it gives you the ability to take the 4s and 5s and work with them.
you just-
That's good. All right. Well, and again, remember it's an ongoing process. So, anytime you want to do this again down the road in the future, we can hash through some other topics and other items, or center on specific ones. We talked about
What
some
kind
of
of
the
things do you
areas.
have the most attractive centers having?
Oh,
We have an employee manual.
Yeah.
We have a- So what would be different?
Basically, your policies are within those two, in the employee handbook, and it's in your parent, student, parent, child handbook. Then within those
That's what I
are
was wondering
within
if
those
there
are
was
your
something specifically
policies.
different. Okay.
But and that's something, it's always nice to do too, is say go and look at other policy manuals of other early childhood centers. So, it's actually something I was talking to Cheryl and Lee about, along with the curriculum. Can we make a folder in Google Docs accessible to all early childhood directors that have the employee handbooks and have the student parent handbook that's accessible to everybody? So you put yours there, they put theirs there, and so on, and then you can go in and you can see what other people have. Take what's good and leave what's bad. Take what works for you and leave what doesn't. One of the things we did every year is at a school, I had my director of guidance when we started school in September. Once we got rolling, she would go and she would get 9 different handbooks for me for other Lutheran schools around the country that were similar to us, and our competitors were 5 of them that we were closely competitive with. So we would see what was good, what was bad, what was different. Yes. Absolutely. All right, well, it's been good. Thanks so much. I know everybody wants to take off, so can I close this quickly in prayer? There we go. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this group here that serves as board and serves as leaders and guides your ministry, knowing it is truly yours, and we have been placed before it and in front of it to guide it, to grow it, to put it down the path that you would have it be. The blessing that it is to so many students and families and kids, and blessing that it is to the congregation. Allow everyone to see it, to know it, and to hear the joy that comes from the early childhood center. Be with everyone as they travel home this evening. Keep them safe. We'll give you thanks for Pastor Thiem and his wife's anniversary tonight and today. Be with them as they celebrate as well. Guide us. Allow us to do all to your glory at all times. Your son's name, pray. All right. Thank you.
Is there a particular time of month that's better, or is it just very?
I'm always
Okay. We'll just kind of play it by ear.
Okay,
You're always on a plane.
yeah, I thought I'm working.
Oh, do you really? What news? Yeah, I know Newsy. Yeah.
Yeah, we got the building statement.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's awesome.
I was gonna answer